All right, what's going on, guys? So we've gone through the history of F1, we've gone through the history of teams through F1, and now I would like an explanation about F1. And where best to get an explanation from F1 but from the drivers themselves. So we're going to watch F1 drivers explain F1. The link to this video will be in the description, and hope you guys enjoy the video. I hope I enjoyed the video. Hope we all learned something today.
Why is a weekend 3 days? Mainly because in Formula 1 it's a bit of a classic to have 3 days. We use Friday as a free practice day.
So 3 days we have on the race weekend, we just have 3 hours of practice on the Friday. Generally when you get to a track you just need time to learn about the car or about the...
So 3 hours to learn and try to get set for the car. I don't know. That seems like a lot of time to me. I mean, maybe it's not, because I'm sure there's all kinds of different things in between, and then adjustments to make, and then what kind of maybe tires that you're gonna run. Maybe the wing, you want to change the angles on it. But 3 hours is a good amount of time, but I don't know if you spend all 3 hours on the track.
About the conditions.
We divide the weekend into 3 parts. Here we would practice, here we would qualify, here we would race. We use this day to learn everything we can about the car and the track.
Saturday is really about refining the changes you made in practice in the morning, qualifying for position to where you start in the race.
We use this day to exploit the maximum we can out of our machines to qualify as best possible for race day that is.
Yeah, qualifying is, I find qualifying entertaining, because these are like the track is completely clear for the most part. You just put pedal to the metal, try to go as fast as you can, try to find out where you're gonna be standing at the start of the race. So it's everything to its pure speed.
Important day.
You couldn't definitely do it all in one day. There's not enough time or energy.
Practice is very important to prepare qualifying, but also to prepare.
F1 points are awarded by the position, obviously, and if you win a race, you get 25 points. The biggest gap between the points is in the higher positions, so from second to third is quite a big gap as well. But then it gets closer, and if you finish 10th, you get 1 point.
So F1 points are awarded to the cars that finish.
All right, so you get 25 points for first place, 18 points for second, and then 15, 10, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 1. So you got, I mean, most of the time, it's not just going to take wins to win it all. You gotta score points like every race to try to make it to the top, and it is possible. I don't know if it's ever happened before to win the whole thing without actually winning a race, but trying to stay consistent throughout the season, I'm sure, is very important. And with the constructors, I'm not sure if the points, so maybe they'll explain it later, with if the racer and the constructor basically share the points.
In the top 10 positions, so starting with first place down to 10th, you get 25 points, then 18, 15, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, and 1.
And we also have a point for the fastest lap of the race.
Valtteri Bottas is going for the fastest lap.
To gain that, sometimes you might need to compromise.
Is that like one point for the race? So for the fastest lap. And I think he's going to explain how they're going to give up some of the tire performance just to try to create that fastest lap.
Your strategy to put fresh tires at the end of the race when you have less fuel in the car, when the car is lighter. So you might try and go for it, but there's always a bit of a risk doing that.
Winner gets 25 probably. Second 18, 15, and from there 10th get 1 and everybody can come.
Sectors on the track are made for us to basically cut the track in a few sections, so it's clearer to us where we are losing time or where we are gaining time. Most of the tracks have 3 sectors in Formula One.
If we draw Barcelona very quickly here,
I'm sure that some of the cars are probably set up in different ways to make themselves faster in certain sectors, and they would probably try to gain time in places that they know their car probably performs better in those sectors than in other sectors. But breaking it up in those sections probably just help for communication on the radio. Be like, hey, you're going a little bit slow in sector whatever.
goes like that, it's very poor, but basically you divide it into 3. You have the first chicane, and turn 3, you have the second sector, and then you have the third sector. First sector, basically we call it the fast sector because you have the whole long straight and a very fast corner that is flat out. The second sector becomes a bit twistier and medium speed corners, and the third sector
is twistier a technical term in F1?
Actually pretty slow.
So it's just easier for everyone to say, okay, he has something happening in sector 1, or he has something happening in other sectors.
I'm sorry, it's probably like a language barrier
and it
thing.
helps the teams basically to divide the performance of their own car to learn in which type of corner you can improve.
Why are you laughing, man? I feel like an idiot.
An apex is, how do you even explain it? It's funny, as
It's
a
the
driver,
top.
you just do things and don't really.
I don't know if it's any different, but an apex would probably be like the top, like the apex of a gear, where you reach that apex and then you have to shift into a different gear. I don't know if that's what he's explaining. You got the apex of a hill. You're climbing a hill, and when you get to the top of it, you're at the apex.
But okay, so let's use this one. So the apex is the point of the corner where you want to like close the corner to then give you the best trajectory to exit the corner in the fastest ways.
An apex is the point you gotta reach in the middle of the corner, which is most of the time at the apex, like around the curb.
Yeah, I would have never thought of it as like the apex of the curb. I would have just considered it like the fastest racing line. I would never have thought apex of a turn.
So yeah, middle of the corner, basically there and there.
An apex, I'm gonna draw you here on this lovely whiteboard. So we've got the racing car here, and I'll draw the racing line, which is from the outside of the track, hitting the inside of the corner before running wide to the exit of the corner again.
The apex is the most central and the slowest part of the corner, but you never know where the grip is. Sometimes it could be more like this could be late apex, early apex.
You want to.
Now I don't know if there's when there's more rubber on the track, is that part of the track grippier or slippier? And those are technical terms.
Come out a little bit higher up top to then flow through apex somewhere here and then come out like that. And that'll give you a trajectory where you can come late into the corner and kind of slingshot out. So that is what we call an apex, the point where we kind of...
So I would think that I know that in rainier conditions, even just on regular roads, that as soon as it starts raining, that's the slipperiest conditions, where the oil starts to rise out of the asphalt, and then later on, when it continues to rain, the oils and stuff kind of wash off the road, and it's not as slippery, but it's still slippery. Don't get me wrong, but it's at its worst when it starts to rain and the road starts getting wet.
Close the corner.
And the apex is described at the point of which you hit the inside of the track. So we often describe it, hitting the apex around the corner, and most of the times, the more apexes you hit, the better it is.
There could be many different angles of doing this corner, depending on your car setup and wind direction and so on.
I just learned something myself, actually. Or confused myself even more, I don't know.
Understeer is when you turn and car doesn't turn, basically. So the front tires slide. It's when you're turning and the rear of the car often pushes the car forwards, and it's just not, the car's not rotating at the rate in which you're putting the angle in.
Generally, drivers don't like understeer. I think, in a general thing, I think road.
Now, I heard this recently that Verstappen prefers the car to be opposite of what most drivers would like, and that is that's been a problem for Perez this season. Is that that Verstappen doesn't mind as much of an understeer as compared to an oversteer.
Cars that you drive will have a lot of understeer because it's very safe, but a quick car generally is oversteering. So you need the car to be reactive because that way you can carry the most speed through a corner.
Understeer and oversteer, the two most famous words in an engineering debrief. Understeer is when the car is not responding to the amount of steering lock that you are winding on. It's when the car understeers, so you're demanding more steering lock for the amount of front end that you want.
Understeer is when you turn the steering wheel into a corner and the front of the car is sliding, so the car is going straight more than you want to. And oversteer is the opposite, is that when you turn the steering wheel, the rear end slides.
I mean, I think you would try to make the driver as comfortable as possible, but at some point, the driver has to learn how to adapt. And adaptability of conditions, of moments in life, that's the difference between somebody or something that's successful as compared to unsuccessful. You have to be able to adapt to the situations that you're in and try to make the best of them.
And the car turns more than you want it to.
If you ever watch Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, that is oversteer. So the front, let's say if the trajectory of the car is doing this, let's say that's kind of what I mean. The front and rear wheels following the line. The rear wheels would go, let's say, past the slip angle, past the line, and tends to mean that the rear is losing grip. So when we complain about oversteer, will generally mean that the rear is moving too much and it's moving out of line. So yeah, you'll often see spins where we get a snap of oversteer and we do this.
See, it's like I've played some racing games and stuff like that, and obviously almost everybody on here has driven a car before. You can be in some bad conditions and you can just feel the car, and your ability to become one with how the car feels and to be familiar with the car definitely helps in situations. And F1 driving and racing in general, basically you're putting these cars to the maximum amount of level and testing their limits, and these limits is where you have to feel. You have to be the car and feel the car. It sounds weird, but it makes sense to me.
Insert one of my crashes.
The oversteer would be if you come into the corner a bit too fast perhaps, and you maybe have this kind of moment when the rear slides and you have to make a correction, because the rear, if you don't make a correction, then you're going to.
I may have been completely wrong about earlier what I said about Verstappen liking understeer or oversteer. I think I had it backwards. I think he likes an oversteer and is able to basically control the slide of the car. I'm sure that puts hell on the tires to some extent, but if you have a good amount of downforce, when you have the amount of oversteer, it certainly helps control that slide.
Then you're going to spin.
An oversteer is when you turn and it turns too much and usually overpowers the rear, so the rear steps out and you have to correct.
Yeah, I have a funny story. There was a Japanese driver who I used to race against in GP3, and I convinced him. He didn't know much English.
I don't mean to seem like an expert or anything. I am definitely not, but that is just basic logic to me that would be true.
So I convinced him that oversteer was understeer and understeer was oversteer. So for the first test, he was complaining of oversteer when he meant understeer, and it was understeer. Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was quite a funny joke, but apparently it wasn't that funny.
Terminology is 100% important in racing as well. I do remember a video where it was about Dale Earnhardt Jr., how he was calling something, I can't remember the exact verbiage or words that were used, but he was calling something different than what everybody else calls it. And he had a new pit chief, and the pit chief was thinking that everything was okay. And the whole time Dale Earnhardt Jr. was saying that the car was performing in a bad way. So definitely the conversation, the terminology, and the ability to communicate with your pit chief or your pit crew members in the same exact verbiage is extremely important.
Up is when you basically brake too hard and you exceed the amount of grip available, so the tire basically stops and locks, and it like and you kind of get smoke because of the rubber and the friction, I guess, on the tarmac.
Is that from the ABS or is that from the brakes?
So it's basically when you brake too hard.
Formula One lockups, something that you see quite a lot on TV. You see drivers finding the limit of the front tires, and it means that you're always trying to keep both axles under maximum deceleration, trying to slow the car as much as possible. But normally when you lock up, it's because you've applied too much brake pressure for the grip available, and the tire just stops.
So a lockup is basically happens when you brake, because we don't have an anti-locking brake system like you do on your road cars. So basically, if I use this little
that answers that question.
The wheel's turning as you're going down the straight, and when you brake, as opposed to kind of decelerating while it's still turning, it kind of stops turning, and you just pretty much go straight like that, and you basically can flat spot the part of the tire.
Yeah, a lot of times learning when you're in even like in bad conditions in weather and stuff like that, it's hard to teach yourself what's best and what's best not to slide out or lose control of the car, because sometimes slamming the brakes, and that is why ABS exists, is not the correct move. Sometimes you just have to ride it, and what I mean by that is if you're taking it's just something that you have to know. If you're taking a sharp turn and you slam the brakes on in a snowy condition, your car is going to slide out. However, you might have to take a turn a little bit wider, but you can make a sharp turn in slippery conditions and keep control of the car. It might not be the turn that you wanted, but it's the turn you're going to get, and the only way you're going to make it.
It stops rotating, and it could create quite a big vibration while you're driving.
You do a lockup, and the tire is not rounded anymore. You've taken off a piece of tire because it's been rubbing against the asphalt. Once you have one lockup, then every time you start braking, it's very easy to hit this part of the tire and keep locking it up. So you start taking even more part of the tire. And then the next time you...
Yeah, flat spotting tires is very bad. Sometimes, I don't know if you probably don't notice, but you see trailers driving down the street. Somebody flat spots the trailer tires, and you can see the tire like wobble or bounce.
Brake, it's easier to lock up again because the tire is more
You can
square.
definitely feel it.
And you end up, it's an exaggeration with a tire that is nearly squared, and you need to pit because you have very little grip, a lot of vibrations, and it's nearly undrivable.
If you lock up for too long, then the rubber on that point starts to get chewed up, and you get what we call a flat spot after a lockup, and then you get vibrations, which isn't fun. So a lockup is braking too hard. I guess that's the easiest way to say it.
Parc fermé is when post-race or post-qualifying, the scrutineers and the officials check the cars our team can't touch the car, can't touch any special parts, so the car has to be checked like it is.
Yeah, there's so I know this video is going a little bit long, but there's at the end of the races, especially the podium cars, they get checked to make sure that they're not cheating and to do their measurements and whatnot. Sometimes I guess it goes a little too far, but it's important. There's been instances where I know in NASCAR that basically they tell the owner, they're like, if you can find out how I'm cheating, I'll take it out. And then the owner or whoever can't find it, and they just leave it in. And sometimes they get away scot-free with it. I'm sure this probably happens in all motorsports. It's not all clean. If you're not, there's an American saying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. It's a dangerous game you play sometimes, and sometimes I bet they cover it up just so the public doesn't know, so it doesn't seem so it's not bad press.
The car cannot be touched by any member of the team or any fan.
To make sure that there's no cheaters, basically. Yeah, is it that more or less? Yeah, okay.
I did want to say one more thing about that, is that sometimes I know this is another NASCAR thing that I watched on a Dale Earnhardt Jr. Podcast, but sometimes the crew chief would go tell the driver that they're cheating and there's some kind of a special thing going on, and there's absolutely nothing. There was no cheating going on, just to give the driver a boost in his mind to think that he has the edge over the competition. And sometimes that mindset will help the driver just be better. It's kind of like taking a water pill, you know what I mean? But that's the end of the video. This one's a little bit longer than the other two that I've done. I appreciate you guys watching. Please check the link in the description. Give these guys a like and a subscribe if you like their content. If you like my content, please give me a like and a subscribe. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much.